Hey Peas! Right now I'm standing in one of the best parts of my house, and that's actually my quail coop. So there's been some big changes this year, but back in March, April-ish time, I ordered some quail eggs online and I hatched them out myself, and now I'm a quail keeper. And so I also built this shed with the help of my family, and the shed is right here, as you can see, but it's attached to the quail aviary slash quail coop, whatever you want to refer to it as. But it's officially an aviary by most people's terms. And I built it this way because I wanted things to look a little more put together in my yard. I didn't want to feel like I had this dirty, dingy, like, coop in the corner, and so it's part of the shed, and it actually ties in really nicely to the yard. So right now it's December, which means I've had these quail about 8 months so far, and I've learned a lot going from summer months to now winter months of keeping them, as far as also hatching them and putting them outside eventually as adults. Before I get into any of that, the reason of this video is, as a new keeper, I feel like all the research I was doing was coming from people who kept quail for a very long time, and that's great, and that's how you should do your research, is from experts. But I also felt like I was lacking in the new person panic of, am I doing this right? And it would have been nice to hear from someone who was also new at it, to know, hey, I just started too and you're doing things fine. The main reason I wanted it was for what most people do, and that is their eggs. As someone who has reptiles and dogs, the quail eggs come in really handy for enrichment and nutrition needs, and quail eggs in most stores can be kind of tricky to find sometimes, as well as just kind of costly. And I don't know, I've always been someone who's been really interested in kind of doing things for myself. I've always liked gardening, but I've always wanted to keep kind of like animals for like an agricultural purpose. Now, the big reason why did I choose quail? There's a few reasons as a new bird person of why I've chosen quail. One is the argument of quails versus chickens, and I chose quail over chickens because quail are actually much quieter. The females make almost no noise at all, and the males have a crow that sounds like a natural bird call. So even if the males were to make a noise, and I have a male out here and I would be shocked if you heard him at all, males, the call they make sounds very similar to a bird call versus a chicken rooster call. Most neighbors would be okay with the more like natural bird sounding noise. And so the aviary I keep them in is a 4x12 foot aviary with 6 foot plus ceilings, because the roof is angled, so at the minimum it's 6 feet, and then it goes up to like 8 or 9. And then this particular coop, I could fit quite a bit of quail, depending on who you talk to, but the number I'm currently satisfied with, because they're not crowded at all and they have plenty of space, is 11. I have 11 quail in here. At one point I did have some more, but I also keep the quail for more than just their eggs. So that's another reason I chose quail, is they are easier to process as well for meat than chickens, and so that's why I chose quail. But the eggs were a huge reason. Meat is just kind of secondary, and the 11 I have are the 11 that kind of stay. It's 10 females to 1 male. And so let's actually go inside and look at some of the quail. So here's one of my quail. It's actually my male, and you can tell by his red chest. Here's one of my quail. It's a female. You can hear her. And inside the coop, it allows me enough room to walk around. That's why I also wanted to do an aviary style versus a coop, because I can come in and actually sit and spend time with the quail. It also allows enough room for their food and water. And if you can see in the back, I have 2 huts that I keep straw in for the colder days or in the summer when it's warm. It just allows kind of an enclosed space to get out of rain, to get out of the sun. The straw helps keep them warm in the winter. And so I wanted to also encourage them to lay their eggs in there, but quail, if you didn't know, just kind of lay wherever. And that's something as a new person that I thought, oh, you know, that's something people say, but my quail will be different. Nope, they really do just lay wherever. So if you're new to keeping quail and you're determined and you're like, I will make them lay in a certain spot, that's going to be a really hard thing to do. Not saying it's impossible, but I was not able to do it with the tricks I was trying to have. Alright, so I've squatted down so while I talk you can see the quail in the background. So some things that I've learned as a new person keeping quail is that you obviously, it depends on how you keep them actually, and that's something I've learned is a lot of people Most people go with cage style keeping, and that's just because the way the quail are and why most people are keeping them, that is the simplest solution. I personally wanted to go for the aviary style, which is like this. It's like an open kind of container that I can come in, and I went this style because I wanted to be able to come into it and spend time with my quail. Although they don't like me all that much. I've never done anything to them, but they're not cuddly, and that brings me to a second point. They are a lot more flighty, and this goes for a lot of animal species. The smaller the animal, the flightier they are. I did spend a lot of time out here when it was spring and nice weather, and it didn't seem to make any difference. So if you're looking for an animal that you're gonna cuddle with and spend a lot of time with, quail is not going to be it. The next thing I've come to learn with quail is that a lot of people say they are quick to die. A lot of people will say that quail are looking for ways to die and that they die in all kinds of ways. And I believe that's true because I am in some quail groups online, and I've seen the ways that these quails will kind of off themselves. But in my experience as a new quail keeper, if you do everything in your power to do everything right, it's not going to be a common occurrence. I did even myself have one accidental death, and so I think that's just due to everything else being as protective as possible, not having anything for them to bump their heads on, keeping them safe away from predators, keeping them in a good area. I've tried my hardest to keep them healthy because I despite using them for their eggs and their meat, like, these are my little guys. Like, these 11 are my pets. I still consider them pets, and I want to care for them as if they were a pet indoors. I'm a big believer in no matter the use of the animal, you should treat it the best that you can so that they can have the best quality of life, and that's exactly what I try to do. Something else I've learned as a new quail keeper is that when people tell you they will lay their eggs anywhere, they mean it. I thought that I would find a way for them to lay in a nest just like chickens do, but they don't. And so that was something I just had to realize. I have to come out here almost every day in the summer when they're laying a lot, and then every couple days in the winter to pick up any eggs, because they will lay them anywhere, which means they'll also step on them. So if you don't want to mess, if you want as many eggs as possible, you do need to be mindful of picking them up. Another tip that I also have is for keeping my quail food. So my quail food I keep in an outdoor trash can. So what I did is I bought an outdoor latching trash can because raccoons and stuff will be able to open like pop lids. So I made sure it was latching, and I lined it with a trash can, but instead of trash I put quail feed in there, and I have a scoop. And so whenever I need to fill this up, the quail food, I just take the big scoop. It's used for horses. I just take that and I take a big scoop of feed, and then I come in here and I put it in their food bowl. I really like that. It's just on the side of my coop, and I got a decorative style trash can as well, so it doesn't look like, oh, there's a trash can in your yard. Those of you that know me and have been on my channel know I'm very much about pet keeping for the home. Basically, I like pets, but I don't like it to look like I have pets. Like, I don't want someone coming over and going, oh, it smells. I don't want someone coming over and going, oh, that's like a dirty little shack of quail in the corner. I try to keep things as nice as possible, which is why I did this shed style aviary, and I have the decorative style trash can. And the last thing I want to talk about is what has worked for me out here. What did I personally decide to do when I was raising quail? One is having 2 separate little huts in my aviary for places for them to hide. I did 2 separate ones instead of like one big area, because sometimes quail will group up and form cliques, and I wanted to have two spaces so different cliques could go to the different ones, and it didn't feel as crowded to them, and that way they had some space away from each other. Another thing I want people to know if you're hatching your quail at home is you don't have to buy or use a fancy brooder. You can almost use kind of pretty much anything. I hatched some quail in my classroom, and I kept the chicks in a kennel because I have kennel cages in my room. I teach a veterinary course, and in the back of my classroom, one of the kennels I just like spaced out, and I put the quail chicks in there. Home here, I used one of my spare reptile cages, so it's a glass front cage but with a screen top. I kept the quail in there and they were perfectly fine. Quail, I think, are pretty flexible species. You don't necessarily have to do what people are recommending, and I think that was important to realize is you can find what works for you. And so I never bought a fancy brooder or anything like that. I didn't have to convert a storage tote, although that is a cheap way to do it. So I've realized quail are smelly. Like, very smelly, especially indoors, and so I do not recommend anyone ever to keep quail indoors. There are people who do, but they usually have like just a few, and they have to clean that cage every single day. So unless you want a high maintenance job, as soon as your quail are done being in the brooder, they do need to go outside. And even outside they can smell. I've found ways to keep the smell down. I do a deep bedding back here, and so I just churn the bedding every so often, and then every like quarterly I take out the whole thing and replace it just so it's fresh. And so that's all I really have to say about my quail. You can see Minnie back here loves to watch them, which is also why fortify your cages, please. Even if you're not worried about raccoons and possums, if you have dogs or cats, your quail are still vulnerable to them. And honestly, they're not even freaked out by her. They're more freaked out that I'm right here. But quail keeping has been a journey, and I'd love to make a specific video answering more specific questions or showing you something that you guys want to see more specifically. So leave a comment, please, of any questions you have about the quail. I feel like I'm starting to get a hang of it now that I've hatched out a few batches, and they've been outside for almost a year. We're gonna get close to a year soon. So any questions, please ask, because as someone who keeps them, as a regular person with a regular house, I am not a farmer by any means. I did not grow up in agriculture, but I think I've learned a lot in how to do this as a city girl. So ask any questions, please, and I would love to answer them, just because they've become a real fun passion of mine, and I love keeping these quail.